Good evening, fellow Plexers, and this goes out to Dennis. So Dennis, I wanted to do a video for you. I've been thinking about it all day, and I haven't been home that long. So I want to see a dashboard screenshot expanded. I've got this blown up, but this expands it. I want to be able to verify that you're connected directly and not indirectly. Indirect connection would have a yellow exclamation point. I'm using a lower bit rated 4K media in this example. It's only 26 megabits. It is 4K Dolby Vision HDR10 and everything's direct streaming. And I think this is on my tube style NVIDIA Shield. Now it doesn't always signify when the subtitles are turned on, but I just turned on the hearing impaired subtitles. Some streams reflect that and some don't. They always used to reflect the subtitles being on, but Plex has made some changes in that department, so they don't always pop up. All right, so they're not popping up here. So this will give me a lot of information. And I understand that you say everything streams fine once the stream's going. It's the interface that's slow. So let's pop out of this and look at the interface. This is a direct IP address login. And let me get this back down to something more reasonable. So if I drop down to my documentary movie library, I'd love if you could install OBS on one of your computers, OBS Studio, and make a video that you could send to me privately. I'd like to see exactly how slow this operation is. So this is probably the fastest you're going to get because this is a direct IP address login. If I bring up the web app, all of a sudden I have to refresh to get out of the white screen effect with Chrome. All right, let's do the same thing. Let's go to that same. Why do I have this zoomed in so much? Okay, so is this any slower than the direct IP address login? I don't know, it seems pretty quick to me, but I'd like to see your speed. So the same interface, this is going through Plex. I can pull this up while I'm away from home. You don't need any sort of fancy scheme to get back into your server. I think you just need remote access enabled. And I'll have to test it. I'll have to try a test server. I think I can probably get into a test server without remote access enabled and access the server through app.plex.tv. So those are the two options that are through a web browser. If you really love the interface, there's the Plex Player app. That's the same exact interface. That seems the same speed to me, but this has the same player engine bolted into it as the Plex HTPC app does. So if you've got to use the web interface, the web app, to play media on a computer or a laptop, use the Plex desktop app. You'll get the best playing results out of it. And it's all the same interface for maintenance. Again, as I've mentioned in the thread, the Plex HTPC client app is a premier client app that is right up there with an NVIDIA Shield Pro or the latest Apple TV device. All right, so let's see how quick this is. So I'd also like you to install the HTPC client app and tell me if the interface is fast or slow here. And I don't really know if the interface is slow on other client devices. Are you into the Android TV / Google TV ecosystem, the Apple TV ecosystem, the Roku ecosystem? Are you using a 4-year-old Samsung TV with a built-in Plex app? And I would expect that to be slow. So your premier streaming client apps or ecosystems would be Google TV. Even the $20 Walmart O&M device performs fantastic, almost as good as an NVIDIA Shield. Apple TV, the latest one, you can't beat it, even though I am the furthest thing from an Apple fanboy. And what else is good? I think LG TVs are pretty good. I don't own one, but I have a few friends and family who stream from newer LG TVs and they never transcode. I've never seen the interface on them. I just assume it works fine because there's no complaints. I'm not a fan of Samsung TVs. They transcode too much. I'm not a fan of Roku devices. They transcode too much. I can pull up Tautuli, which keeps a history of all my streams, and I can show you that the Roku devices on my server by my friends and family are by far the devices that have the most transcodes. Because my media is easy to stream, my movie media is almost primarily H.264 media, lower bit rate, the Rokus do fine with that. If I have an HDR, H.265 or HEVC, those two things mean the same thing, video, in my TV show library, or occasionally you'll find a movie like that. I have one Roku user. He has the Roku LT. The picture looks horrible, and it's all his device, not my server. And unfortunately, Roku device owners find it hard to believe that their device could be at fault. No issues on the other platforms. No issues on a LG TV. I don't really have anybody streaming on a game system on my server. That hasn't happened yet, so I can't report back if anybody has problems, but I've always heard those are not the best client apps to use, but that might have changed. So yeah, this is the Premier Client app. So use this to tell me if the interface is slow. Because if the interface is slow, we're pointing to a network issue someplace in your setup. And your one response to me saying that you can remote access with Cloudflare, it makes no sense to me because I wasn't saying that you couldn't use some other remote access scheme. But a scheme's not needed unless you're on a CGNAT provider. If you're on a regular ISP where you can forward Plex's port, you don't need to do any special magic network tricks to make Plex work. And if you are doing special things, disable everything to test Plex server. Maybe we'll find the answer sooner that way. All right, lastly, I want to bring Unraid into the picture because I want to show you a few things here that might help you troubleshoot without needing my help. All right, so this is a 11th gen Intel NUC with a mobile processor in it. The Iris Xe graphics in this are fantastic when you need to hardware accelerate a stream. I have no parity drives because I have no array. My array is a 64 gigabyte flash drive that Unraid requires to start everything up. And I have two Western Digital 500 gigabyte SSDs, one NVMe technology and one SATA technology in my little NUC, forming an Unraid cache pool right here. It's redundant, it's RAID 1, it's BTRFS file system. It's very complementary to my SHR redundant volume on my Synology NAS. If one of these dies, I don't lose any data. I simply shut the server down, replace one of these drives, start it back up, and within 10 minutes it's mirroring the other one and everything's just good to go. I use unassigned devices to connect back to my Plex shared media folder. I've named that simply Plex. I have another shared folder named channels-dvr-unraid, and it's a very simple setup. But your Docker is going to be the same as my Docker with Plex. You just have different volume mappings. And you'll see how mine map back to my Synology NAS. So let's go into the Plex container for a second. Let me turn on Advanced View. Let me show more settings. And now, I was a novice at Unraid until, I don't know, May of 2023, when I did an experiment on a 7th gen little Dell Micro Optiplex to see if I could use it as a Docker host only. I could not find a single YouTube video or written instruction telling me how to do this, but what had happened while I was researching Unraid, somebody said, oh, you don't need a storage drive, you can use a flash drive to stand in for it. Unraid 7 is in release candidacy now. It's out of beta, release candidate 1 is out, and that removes the requirement of having to have an actual storage device to start the array. So Unraid 7 will let me remove that flash drive to get the cache pool up and running. So back to my setup. I watched a fabulous, what's the name of his channel? I can't think of it now. I gotta pause the video and figure this out. It's important. I'm back. IberCorp. I watched a fabulous IberCorp video that taught me how to add the information to use half my RAM for RAM transcoding. And that extra parameters line consists of this. So this section allows Plex to access the Intel iGPU in my hardware. This section uses half of my 32 gigabytes of RAM for RAM transcoding. You can probably set 16 gigabytes yourself for RAM transcoding, or maybe 20. You'll have plenty left over for your other purposes. And then he tacks on the no-healthcheck at the end. So this is just one line. Well, that's too small to read. This is just one line, and I'll paste this into the description of the video, or you can just search for Plex RAM transcoding, or search YouTube Plex RAM transcoding, and the IberCorp video will pop up. So this was a very easy container to pop up or to get up and running. I transferred my Plex Docker container from my Synology NAS to this Unraid box, didn't lose any metadata. There's no CPU pinning going on. The network type for me is host. My original container on the Synology NAS had 6 paths in it. One path back to the Docker application files, and then a path for each type of Plex library files. Now my shared media folder on my Syno NAS is named Plex, very simply. I could have just created one path to that and accomplished the same thing, but I recreated what I had on the Synology NAS. Actually, I have a test Plex server on each of my Synology NASs, my original DS1019, and I've set one container up just like this and one container up with a single path, just to be able to show in videos the options that there's not one right way. As long as it works, that's right. So let me edit one of these. It's very simple for a Synology NAS. This is the virtual folder that you see inside of Plex when you're adding a library. This is my true path back to my Synology NAS. It's read-write enabled, and that is something that has to be if you're going to use a DVR. If you're not going to be using DVR, it can be read-only. Very simple to set up. So what else is important here? The app data. By default, this says user, which puts the Plex Docker container folder in the app data folder on your regular Unraid array. I don't have one of those, so this has to be on cache, which is my cache pool. I think the PUID and the PGID were all configured for me, and I didn't have to do anything really. This was quite easy to set up. So I'll go through it slowly and bore everybody else, but this way you can see what's different with your Plex container setup versus mine. And again, to see it all, you have to click down here someplace. I don't see it now, to show more, and also advanced view over there. So Dennis, I'm truly interested in getting you up and running, whether you think Plex is good or not once you get it running properly. But this is just some preliminary stuff to go over. instead of asking you a million questions, I thought I'd show you some of the important early things I'd be trying to get answers out of you from. And the big one, I'd like to know, use the HTPC client app, use a direct IP address login, and tell me if under both interfaces that sort of activity is slow under both interfaces. And if you can get OBS Studio installed, record a video or use any screen recording video you can. If you have an Android phone, a modern one like a Pixel, there's screen recording built into it. I'm sure an iPhone has the same stuff if an iPhone is good, right? I don't use Apple products. And then the HTPC client app to recoup that. Is this interface slow switching libraries? Now I got big libraries. I got like almost 7,000 movies and 800 TV shows. You see this one, there's, I don't know, maybe 400, 500 documentary movies. That popped up higher. So I don't know how large your libraries are. If you've got 20,000 movies, man, it might be slower than having 200 or 2,000 movies. So yeah, let me know if a true client app, if this is slow too, just like the web app. And you really need to test a direct IP address login here, the app.tv login, or the app.plex.tv login, and the Plex desktop app. Test all three. See if it's the same slow experience, because if it's not, that's clues as to what might be going on. So before this gets too long, let me get it on YouTube and get it out to you. I've troubleshot so many Plex servers. It's really just starting with the basics. Sometimes you miss something, you have to come back, but your issue really sounds network related. And let me go back to Unraid. That's something I wanted to mention. So you can install this speed test by Open Speed Test. This is not testing the speed of your internet connection. When you pull the address up for this container, this lets you test your local network speed. So, like you can't do it on a Roku or you could do it on a Fire TV because it has a web browser. You could do a speed test on your client, on some client devices, to see how fast you're connecting back to your server. Something like this installed on your Unraid server might help you detect a local networking issue. Now, I don't want to jump to a conclusion to suggest what might be wrong, but other things you could let me know is who your ISP is. Is your ISP a CGNAT provider, which is basically a double NAT that you can't fix? A normal double NAT situation is someone not understanding they can't put their own router behind a gateway device, a gateway router from their ISP, without putting that gateway device into bridge mode. Or turn it in, like if it's a coaxial cable system, your provider probably has a plain Jane modem they can give you, then you can hook any router to it. CGNAT is something that you can't fix. You might be able to buy your way out of it. And when I hear Cloudflare, I'm wondering if someone is trying to compensate for a CGNAT issue. And again, because CGNAT is double NAT, it's possible to add another double NAT on top of that. Say you have a cellular provider, or like Starlink. Say you have T-Mobile Home Internet, and maybe even Fios Home Internet or something. Those are all CGNAT carriers. The cellular ones are definitely CGNAT, and last I knew, you could not buy your way out of CGNAT at Starlink. Maybe that's changed. Well, people who use those type of services, or have to use those type of services, want to connect mesh systems to those units too. And I don't know if any of those gateway devices can be put into bridge mode, but you're adding double NAT on top of a CGNAT issue to use your own router past one of those specialty ISP providers. and I don't know anything about your networking setup. You haven't mentioned that, and your issue truly looks to be network related from my perspective. So the more information you can give me or anyone else, the quicker we can find a solution. And hopefully helping you find a solution turns out to you liking Plex. You may just not like it. I used MD for a couple of years. It's not my cup of tea, but they had good playlist support before Channels DVR blew them and Plex out of the water. Let me go to sources. When they added their, let's add a source. When they added their custom channels source option. And this is where the action is, this M3U playlist. This is just what I've done. And this is the free TV everywhere option from Philo. I don't pay for Philo, but I did a video showing how to add a TV everywhere source option. So that's added into my tuner. So if I go to live TV and the guide, it's not a great web interface. You can see all these different tuners, and this is what I brought in as just something to do. Of course, this is the free Philo stuff that's not really worth a lot, plus from my two tuners. So Plex does not support, let's get here, Next Gen TV. And fortunately, well, I didn't know this one was added. My NBC, CBS, and ABC Next Gen channels are in the clear. They're not behind DRM. And when I record from these channels versus the default channels, it's a smaller file size for the video. So the quality is the same because my three networks are broadcasting in 1080p during prime time. And right now there are no 4K broadcasts on the Next Gen channels, so they are still 1080p, but it's a more compressed with less loss of a file that's made versus what's recorded off the older channels. So, video's getting long. We're past the 22-minute mark, but I wanted to show you some things that I would be asking you anyway. And you know, OBS Studio isn't hard to set up. If you're using Linux, the keyboard shortcuts won't work in a Wayland session. An Xorg session they will, but this works fine under Windows if Windows is your jam. I'm not a Mac guy. I wouldn't know a Mac computer from macaroni, so I can't help you with the Mac stuff. So anyway, I'll get this on YouTube. Happy Plexing. I am happy to help you figure your Plex stuff out. I'm a Plex enthusiast. I love Plex. Plex works great. It works great on my system, and because it works great on my system, it has to work great on your system too. And eventually I can help you get it there, and there's other group members that can help get you there too. But you got to be open to asking for the help. And Dennis, I know exactly how it feels to not be able to figure something out and have to listen to somebody else help you. You just have to acquiesce to the process and let me or somebody else help you. You cannot be your own expert, because if you were an expert on this, Plex server would be working for you, man. So just relax. Let me help you. Let somebody else help you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Plex, but there's some part of it that's not set up right, or there's something going on with your local network, and it really won't take that long to figure out. So I like to see the dashboard screenshot. I like to see if any of your Plex container settings are very wildly different from how my container is set up. And I'd like to know about your ISP and your local networking stuff. Routers, mesh routers, how they're plugged in, order, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, a CGNet situation with a double net added on top of it, I can't imagine how fun that might be for getting packets around your local network. So anyway, happy Plexing, and for anybody else that's watching, I really enjoy your viewership. I have a lot of fun with this channel. Thanks for watching.